Start the show with a discussion on RT. If everyone's been watching the news, you'll have seen that Labour have come out of a policy where they want Ofcom to possibly review its licence. I've invited Ross Ashcroft, who's the presenter of Renegade Inc. Ross, are you there?
I am. I'm here, and thank you very much for hosting this.
So, what's your take on this idea that RT's licence has to be reviewed? Do you think RT has broken the regulations more than other channels, or it deserves to be scrutinised more? I mean, obviously you won't say that, but what's the evidence on this?
Well, the evidence is really simple. When you realise who looks after the complaints procedure at the BBC, you realise it's not the BBC. So Capita, the outsourcing group, look after all the complaints for the BBC. So when you start to see people like Keir Starmer standing up at a dispatch box in the House of Commons saying, look, RT needs its licence revoked, or at least that it needs a review, there's a clear political motive.
I've got someone who wanted to come on and talk about your show in particular. So I'll just introduce him, because obviously you're going to say your show's great. I can see now, yeah. So what's your view on Ross's show that's on RT? Do you think it should have its license reviewed? Do you think RT is beneficial to our media, or do you think it should?
I think it is absolutely essential. It's the only, well, apart perhaps from Al Jazeera, it's the only mainstream show on British television that gives a real alternative. And Renegade Inc. is the best of a really good crop of discussion programs that RT have. And talk about bias. You know, Putin is a bogey figure, and therefore you mustn't have RT. And if you start going down that road, then you start censoring all journalists just because you don't like what they say. And the Labour Party under Keir Starmer is just doing the Tories' job for them.
Keir Starmer stands at that dispatch box and says, let's ban it, because my interest with Keir Starmer, for instance, is who funded him.
Yeah.
And I know who funded him, but I can't because we're Ofcom regulated, I can't go on air and say, this is what's happened to the Labour Party.
I don't want to get Ofcom looking at my licence as well. So, Ross, I just want to tell you this, right? One of the people who did say they'd come on has actually come on the call.
Perfect.
John.
Hello.
Morris.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Everyone's been kind of agreeing that RT should not have its licence reviewed. The chat has been full of people saying that RT should not have its licence reviewed. And we are waiting for you, John, because we want
I must say, I didn't find the programme that gorgeous George Galloway put on that wonderful. Maybe it's got better in its time, but I never was really keen on his programme at all. Maybe it's got smartened up. I was really quite embarrassed by Alex Salmond, but of course he did some interesting interviews. And as far as quite a lot of it, I found that it was propaganda. As far as what other people do and what they, Renegade, etc., if they're able to put on things on Russia Today, that's marvelous. But I think as far as the actual programs that Russia Today put on, they seem to be badly dubbed. The voices don't quite go with the mouths that are talking. And I find a lot of it propaganda. I can't really say more than that. I find it the kind of program that you feel as though there's something behind it.
John, can you please define for me propaganda?
Well, I feel as though it's coming from a central governmental point, and quite a lot of it seems to be orientated that way. And I'm not saying the BBC isn't, and I'm not saying Channel 4 and other people aren't.
Obviously, you've got more knowledge about this than I have, because when you talk about a central governmental point, where's that coming from, John?
I just feel that when they're talking not from a worldwide perspective, they're talking from a Russian perspective. And I know they've changed the name to RT to not any longer be Russia Today. But I felt when I watched it, and as I say, I've only picked up Sputnik within, I suppose, about 3 weeks ago. I've not really watched anything on it other than that. And I just felt that it was a program coming from Russia. It was something that was coming from that government. It wasn't coming from a worldwide perspective. I watch Al Jazeera a lot, and to me, that's quite a different perspective that they have. They tend to have a worldwide perspective. They have reporters who seem to be talking generally about things.
So you don't really watch it. You've watched it for the last 3 weeks.
I pick and choose with it. I pick and choose with it. It's not something that I will sit and watch forever. I will go to it at the end of possibly Channel 4 or BBC News to see how they're putting things on RT.
So, but you've only watched it really, as you said, just for the last 3 weeks?
No, I've watched it since it started, but I've stopped watching it for a long, long time because I felt, especially in the early days, that it was really coming from a Russian perspective. It wasn't really giving you a broad perspective of things at all.
And you think that the channel has evolved from when you very first started watching it?
I don't think it has. I think possibly people like yourself and people who can have programs separate from the output of RT, I think great that you can have a chance to broadcast on that. That's wonderful.
I think what I've learned from this is that there's a difference between RT and the programs on RT, because that some
Yes.
of the programs on RT are not in any way the same as others. So
That's right.
Renegade Inc. is not, you can't say
Absolutely, quite different.
Well, here's an idea, right? Let's close it all down. Let's close it all down. Let's close Renegade Inc. down, which is, the central thrust of our broadcasting is that our critique on neoliberalism, the fact that Thatcher back in the day was politically brilliant, but or supposedly brilliant, but economically illiterate. And actually, we're now 40 years later. We're now dealing with all the inequality, all the environmental degradation, all the social fallout from somebody who didn't really know what they were talking about. Right? Let's just close it all down and then say, okay, we're going to listen to every night hired hands at the BBC and other places. And we're not going to have any alternative. Tina, we're not going to have any alternative. We're just going to balefully agree with all the stuff that comes out of the glass teat every night and then say, yeah, that's going to be easy. That's going to be easier than having to entertain a second idea. You want that? You all want
Not
that?
particularly. No. I'm in favour of you being on the programme, but I find that the Russian side of it is not something that I'm interested in or bother with.
Russian side, discourteously, you joined this call incredibly late.
Yes, I'm sorry, I came in late.
So now you've come into the debate, having not listened to what's gone on before. You're now trying to impose this idea that Russia, the Kremlin, Putin, etc., Lavrov, all control this stuff. So you've arrived discourteously late, right? And now you're saying, oh no, it's the Russian point. And what you've missed in the first 35, 40 minutes of this is that we haven't once, and I don't want to bore all the other people on the call with this, we haven't been censored, monitored, told what to say once, which scuppers your argument. So all these people now on this call are looking at you going, this guy is A, late, B, is banging on about the Russian thing. The presenter of Renegade Inc. has already told us that he's never, ever once been told what to say.
I want to come in here because I I appreciate that John came on at all, considering the other guy didn't.